it's time. So we would like to start T Chan International 8th session. Today we are going to Germany. Then today's MC is Gia from Nagoya University.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you guys. And I will start now. So thank you very much for joining the T Chan International 8th edition, organized by Tangali. And my name is Jia, and I'll be the MC for the day. So in today's program, as she said, we're going to look at Germany, and also joining us will be Mr. Patrick Westermann, who is currently working in a startup called DeepEn in Germany. And thank you very much for joining us today, Patrick.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So before the talk with Patrick, let me introduce a little bit about Germany. Germany. Oh,
I'm gonna just.
There's a little bit of technical difficulties. Okay.
Sorry.
Can you go to the previous slide? I'm going to show the audience where Germany is. So Germany is located in Central Europe and shares border with a lot of nearby countries, including Denmark, Netherlands, Poland, and Czech Republic. So you can see where Germany is located in the map on the screen, which is colored in red. So what is Germany usually known for? So personally, I think one of the most common question I usually ask like my German friends is if they like beer or not. And I don't know, but somehow the image of Germany and beer has been like inseparable, at least among international students here. So how about you, Patrick? Do you like beer?
100%. That is not a stereotype. I think a lot of Germans are big fans, and I think the beer consumption per capita in Germany is quite high. Definitely.
Just a little bit more question. Do you drink it every day or?
Well, not every day. I think that would be a bit unhealthy, but probably like during the weekends for sure. When you like meet friends or something, you sit together, you have a beer, or you go out to a bar, right? And maybe that's a common thing actually between Germany and Japan, because I know in Japan you have all the small bars and small. Is it called Torikizoku? No. The Torikizoku is like one of the chains, right?
Yeah. I think it's called izakaya.
The izakayas, precisely.
Yeah.
But Torikizoku is the one that somehow stuck to my mind. That was what we sometimes went back then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of do some research, and I found that like Germany have at least 1,500 different types of beer. Wow. And also they're really interested in like bread and sausages, and they have at least like 1,000 types of sausages. And I think one more thing that I found very interesting is that if you look at the left side of the screen, top side, so 65% of the highway in Germany have no speed limit and are called the Autobahn. So is it true that you can drive as fast as you can?
That is correct. And I must say, when you start driving for the first time, when you do your driving license, and your driving instructor brings you to the Autobahn and you have to go really fast for the first time very quickly, it's very scary, I must say. So like when you start driving, it's definitely a bit scary, but you get used to it. And I think if everybody really sticks to the rules, then it is also rather safe. However, it is something that I think not so many other countries have. Yeah, like the speed, like the high-speed highway. Yeah.
So,
though there are often discussions whether or not we should actually reduce or basically introduce a speed limit on the German highway, just because it might reduce the number of accidents that happen, but also save some fuel, right, and be better for the environment, because usually the very fast cars, use up quite a bit more of the fuel and pollute the environment more.
Yeah, that's true. So what is the maximum speed that you have driven so far? If I may ask, if you remember?
That's a good question. Maybe like 180 or
Wow.
190 or something like that. Yeah, probably.
I've never experienced that before, actually. That must be scary, yeah. And one more last thing I want to introduce is that maybe about football. So I heard that there are more football fan clubs in Germany than anywhere else in the world. And actually myself, I used to read like Thomas Müller, if I'm like, is my
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, I really liked him when I was a kid. When he was when Germany won the World Cup during 2008, I was really in love with Müller. So I'm not sure how is the football cultures in Germany like?
It is definitely like the biggest sport. Like a lot of young girls and boys are in football clubs, right? Alone, like here in Jena. Jena is not a very big city. We are 120,000 inhabitants, more or less, but we have multiple football clubs and many football fields. Yeah, one large stadium that was just basically renovated for now to like hold even more people. So it is definitely the sport that is most popular in Germany, 100%. Yeah. So usually during the World Championship, also not so much this year, last year, because that was in the winter time, right? But usually when a World Championship is happening during the summertime, you have public viewing everywhere in the streets. People are going out to watch the games together. So it is definitely a big part of the sort of culture, I would say.
Nice. Thank you very much for sharing the football cultures. So let us move a little bit more related to today's topic, which is about like startups. So in Germany, if you look at this chart, it should be
sorry.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So if you look at the startup ecosystem in Germany, it's actually ranked number 6 in the world with more than 17,000 startups. And if you look closer to like the most notable startup in the next slide, next one, sorry. Yeah. So one thing that I found pretty fascinating is that the ResearchGate is actually a startup from Germany. I've been using it a lot for my, at least for finding my research papers when I do like final exams or any assignments in university. And do you know about any stories about ResearchGate, Patrick, or?
Well, I must say I'm about as surprised as you are.
Yeah,
to notice that ResearchGate is actually from Germany. I used it a lot myself during my studies, 100%, but I wasn't aware that it is actually from Germany. But it's of course great to see that like some German startups like that have such a big global presence, right? That's really great to see. I know Ecosia, I think. If I'm not mistaken, it's a browser that is also that has a strong sustainability and environmental mission. Yeah, to do good for the environment at the same time.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, for me, I also looked at the Ecosia website, and it's definitely exactly what as Patrick has mentioned. And also, yeah, the most fascinating thing is the ResearchGate. Back to the previous slide, I forgot to talk a little bit about this. So top 3 industries in Germany are actually marketing and sales, software and data, and transportation. And moving on to the next one. So in this slide, I found one of the data about new startups in Germany, and it was quite fascinating that in only the third quarter of the year, there's already a lot of new startups created. If you look at the chart, most of the quarters have more than 500 startups began for at least the previous 2 years. So yeah, that's quite a lot of new, let's say, entrepreneurships and startups going on. So do you have any insights about like Germany startups and entrepreneurships in general?
Well, what I can say, like the two big startup hubs that are probably existing in Germany, as it is maybe also in Japan, like are of course the capital city, Berlin. A lot of startups are created around there, and there are quite a few online and app and tech-based startups coming from there, more digital startups. While in the Munich region, which is basically at the other end of Germany, Berlin is more in the north, Munich is more in the south. The Munich region is very economically strong as well, with a lot of the big German industrial companies sitting there. And they are also looking out a lot for innovations from startups over the past years. Many have created their own venture capital units to look for innovation from within. And so I think both from the industry and also from the German state, there is a very big interest of creating new innovation in Germany and becoming a more favorable environment for startups. Though unfortunately, it seems like in 2022 here, the number universally in all quarters went down. I guess this must have to do with the general uncertainty, high inflation, the geopolitical situation and so on, that maybe discouraged some people from making the step and taking the risk and becoming a startup.
Yeah, actually, if you see, mostly a lot of, at least like 100 startups were like lesser than the previous year, right? 2021. So probably that's a reason. So let's move on to you, Patrick. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also the startups you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you don't mind, then I would go on and share my screen here and make the start into my little talk today. Well, 1 second, please. I will also share the screen here. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, awesome. So yeah, again, thank you very much. Thank you again very much, Mungali, for having me here at the T Chan International Edition. And I would like to talk a bit about the research transfer startup journey in Germany and the research transfer system that we have here. And I would like to do it by the example of the own startup that I'm working on together with my colleagues, DeepEn, with our vision to create the world's thinnest endoscopes and bring it to market for the use of neuroscientists and also to medicine. And also I would maybe also quickly mention the International Startup Campus that actually built the connection between me and Tungali, and maybe spark some interest, maybe even in startups from Japan to look a bit more closely into Germany, and because we actually do have a lot of support options also for international startups coming here to the region. So that is a short introduction. Maybe to myself here on the right side, that is me in front of one of the amazing temples in pagoda temples in Kyoto. I studied international business in my bachelor and master degree. And during the time, I was also able to go for an internship of 6 months, half a year, living in Tokyo, working for Mitsubishi Fuso in the global network management and contracts department. And so I really enjoy being in Japan, and I had a very, very interesting and fascinating time there. And yeah, so I'm really, really happy to talk here in this sort of sphere today. And what I would like to go into is to give a quick overview of our startup, DeepEn, what we do, and then look a bit at the EXIST program, which is the big German research transfer program that we have here in Germany. And then maybe a bit of personal experience of starting a research transfer spin-off here. Any questions maybe at this point before we dive into the presentation?
Anybody who have a question, please raise your hand, or like you can put the question on a chat box or Q&A box.
Okay, so feel free to ask questions anytime. I'm super happy to answer anything. Well, so our startup here is a couple of facts, a bit of a summary. So basically, the purpose of our startup is to develop, construct, and distribute hair-thin endoscopic imaging systems. We are a startup from a research institute here in Jena, so not from the university, but an independent research institute. And the technology that was developed here was, and that is now going to be translated from us and brought to the market, is a hair-thin endoscope that enables, it's a technology that enables you to turn a single glass fiber, how you might know it from a glass fiber cable. You usually have a bundle of glass fibers. We basically take a single glass fiber, so about as thick as a human hair. And with this technology, we are able to turn it into a powerful microscope, basically. So to do microscopic images at the other end of the glass fiber, turning it into a minimally invasive, very thin imaging device that can be inserted into a living organism, into a living tissue, to perform imaging, microscopic imaging, without actually destroying the tissue too much. Exactly. So the application for it is in the field of neuroscience, for example, when researchers want to look deep into the brain, into the living brain. And in the future, hopefully, we would also bring it to application in medicine. We have 2 international patents, and 3 more patent applications are in preparation. Currently, there are 5 founding members working on the startup. We are but 6 employees are right now working on it. And basically, we're planning this year to found the company. We are actually all still employed at the institute, at the research institute. So the company is not yet founded, which is a part of the German research transfer scheme. More on that later. But in May this year, we actually want to form the limited liability company, the German GmbH, limited liability. We want to go for a first investment round, and then next year we plan for the larger second investment round. Exactly, and maybe here on the very bottom, you can sort of see the journey where we are currently. So we started in 2021, where we applied for the EXIST program. From there, we were basically just financed by our salaries here at the institute. We made the application, we wrote a business plan, we pitched our idea. We then were selected for the EXIST program, started our product development then in late 2021. Continued with some, then we were basically financed by the EXIST program, 4 people in total. Full positions, research positions were financed via this program. And right now we are in early 2023, where we will start our tests with actual users, actual neuroscientists that will use our technology, our device that we now made for brain imaging. And then by the end of the year, our exist phase 1 will run out. And then we will continue with the second phase of exist, which will again give us some money in form of a grant, but we will also take in the first investment. And then later in 2024, we want to go for the large investment round with venture capitalists and strategic investors from the industry. So this is a lot of information maybe to take in. So maybe another quick question round is appropriate here, actually, before we go into a bit of detail. Okay, then, or is there something?
Oh yeah, I just want to ask if audience have any questions. But I also myself have a question for you, Patrick.
Please.
Like, so you said that you studied international management, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So what makes you feel like, oh, you're interested in the field of neuroscience or in this project particularly?
Very good question, actually. It was, well, I was always interested very much in entrepreneurship in general, also doing my studies. And even before, actually, this was one of the reasons why I even decided to go into business, because I was really fascinated by the entrepreneurs and how they change the world. That basic motivation was always there. But then my parents, actually, they are here from Jena, and they're both biologists, working. My dad, for example, is doing electron microscopy. My mom is a biochemist. So I always had like a bit of a warm sort of, I guess, feeling about the whole thing, and like was at least aware about this possibility. And when it came to apply for this research transfer grant, actually the team was hiring me as a working student back then, when I was still in my master degree. So they were actually advertising a job position. Hey, we need a working student with a business background, with a good English and German skill to help us basically write a business plan, come up with a business model. And I thought that was such a great opportunity. So then I started to talk with the people here at the Research Institute. We wrote the business plan together, and yeah, it was successful. And then I knew what I wanted to do after my master was finished. My master degree was finished, which is to be part here in the research transfer endeavor. So that's how I ended up here. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's nice. Yeah. You can move on to your next part. I'll have more questions for you later.
Cool. So this is our team, basically our founding team. We are basically our CEO's executive officer, Sergey, who is a real expert in photonics and laser technology, a physicist who has been writing his PhD thesis about the hair-thin endoscopy and how it can be applied for bioimaging. He has been working together in the group of Professor Dr. Thomas Zismar, who is the main inventor of the technology, has been pursuing it for many years now and brought it really to the stage where it is ready for translation. Then in the team, we have a medical doctor, Hanna Sismarova, who is chief responsible for the sales part and for the customer contracts. Then we have myself, Patrick. I'm going to be in the later company the chief financial officer. And right now I'm more in the sphere of business planning and project administration. And then we also have Jiri Hofbrucker, who is another physicist here on the right side. And he is a chief technology officer. He is responsible for the product development. And then we have also a good support system, thank God. That's part of the, that is really helpful. And it's part of the research transfer network, basically here. We have one really experienced coach from the industry, optical industry, Olaf, who has been a product manager and who brings the experience into the team, because we are all we're a very young team. And Olaf really adds a lot of the real industry experience. And then Yvonne is here, actually the scientific coordinator and patent coordinator here from the Institute, basically working here at the research center. And she is a real expert when it comes to patents and contracts. So we are really glad that we're having these experienced people also to help us in the founding process. And then we are basically also working together with a couple of other institutes that are helping us to actually test our technology in the sphere of bioimaging. So these are very important partners here on the right side as well, because they give us user feedback and technical feedback. And maybe as a very quick pitch of the technology, so neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or epilepsy, they affect every 7th person in Europe and around the world also, and they cost a lot of money, actually more than cancer or diabetes. So both the industry and also the governments, they are really interested in fighting neurodegenerative diseases and advancing possible treatment options. And one way how these diseases are researched is by in vivo microscopy, basically microscopy in the living brain. However, the problem is that nowadays, quite often, neuroscientists have to insert relatively big lenses into the brain in order to look into the deeper structures. And these lenses that are then combined with microscopes, for example, they suffer from a relatively low resolution here. You can see the individual cells here. And they also cause, if you insert them very deep into the brain, they would cause considerable tissue damage. So this is, of course, not desirable because that impairs the and hinders the proper functioning of the brain. So where we come in basically with our hair-thin imaging devices, we are replacing these thick lenses, these thick round lenses, with a hair-thin fiber that can be used for microscopy, and that is orders of magnitude smaller than comparable devices. And it, as you can see here, it is far thinner. It reduces the tissue damage as it is minimally invasive. And it really has a much higher imaging performance. So this is a dendrite of a neuron, so like one of the little arms that the neurons have to connect with each other. And this is a spine. Here, this small thing is a spine on a neuron, which is smaller than 1 micrometer. And it is possible to resolve these kind of small structures through the hair-thin fiber, which is our value proposition for our customers. Indeed, so we have basically a lot of technologies that are out there, from rod lens-based technologies to multiphoton microscopes. But basically, there's this trade-off between the optical resolution and the diameter, and we are trying to go beyond this trade-off and go even smaller with the device and even smaller with the optical resolution, giving our customers the minimal tissue damage, the subcellular resolution, and the deep penetration into the tissue. And this is basically our vision for our device. So it would be a workstation that neuroscientists, for example, or biomedical researchers can put into their laboratories to image in living tissue. And our business model would basically look like that. So we are gonna produce the system. This will be our part in the value creation journey. Then we will distribute it either through direct sales or distribution partners to our customers. And on the supplier side, our main suppliers will be manufacturers of optical components and the manufacturers of the specialty fibers that we are using for our device, which would be consumable material. And in the short run, we want to focus on the neuroscience market, the market for brain research. But in the future, we want to make our step into the area of biomedical endoscopes. Yeah, and this is some basically some market information that might be not so interesting. Basically, we're starting with a smaller market and then going into a much larger market. And what I would like to go into now is to go a bit into how this whole funding scheme works, how we can do what we do, basically the EXIST program, because maybe you have something similar also in Japan. It would be really interesting to hear about that later, but I would give a quick introduction of how it works here in Germany. But maybe at this point there is another question here related to the company, yeah, or to our technology.
Thank you, Patrick. Audience, if you have any questions, please just put it in the chat or the Q&A part. And yeah.
Great, okay.
Okay, great. Patrick, I think you can move on to the next part first. And
okay,
yeah.
Cool. So yes, a bit of an overview over the EXIST program that we are a part of. So basically, you're probably familiar with the technology readiness levels, right? The TRL levels, going from basically basic, here in the orange domain, from the basic principles observed in the research domain, over the development, where a technology matures and it is validated in the lab environment, for example, which is here TRL level, technology readiness level 4. It then matures to further up, technology readiness level 6, where the technology is demonstrated in a relevant environment. And when it is really validated in the relevant environment with customers, with users, for example, then really you can go into really the deployment, and you move into the sphere of real prototyping of a product, where you bring it into deployment, and you can prove it really in the actual environment. And at that point, usually the risk is really quite low. You have done a lot of tests, and the startup at that point is really ready for taking in investors and starting operation, basically. And along this journey, basically, EXIST is stretching here in the middle between the basic research and the product development. So it is really covering this deployment part here, where you are basically, you have already some promising basic research, right? And then you bring it towards applied research, experimental development here. And then by the end of EXIST, ideally, you can really move into prototype development, and find some other external founding options like venture capitalists or business angels to invest into your startup. So it's really from the proof of principle down here, so that it's possible, to the proof of concept, that you have basically demonstrated your the feasibility of the business idea and of the product. And this is the journey where we are basically right now. And the reason behind EXIST really is it's an initiative from the German state, and it is all associated with like the German idea of supporting startups from research that have a really high-tech focused. But in the end, the state of Germany wants to minimize risk for founders. This is like the main interest of the whole grant, that scientists are encouraged to try out new ideas and to make the step and take a bit of a risk and make it basically and start a startup. So the German state, because Germans are usually a bit risk averse, they don't like taking risks. They like to stay in the safe space. This Exist project really makes it quite safe because salaries are still paid and quite a lot of time is given to a company before it is actually in the need of finding own investment and so on and so forth. So yeah, and this is about the size, how big it is. So basically 4 team members can be funded for a maximum period of 36 months with material resources in euros of maximum 250,000 euros. And for a comparison, like euros, and it's right now pretty much the same as US dollars in terms of value. That's in the first phase. And in the second phase, there's another investment as a continuation of 180,000. And basically starting a research transfer spin-off in Germany, I think there's probably a lot of parallels to how it works in Japan. So first of all, you need a motivated team, right? That is where you're having a good basis, because like being in the journey of developing a product, organizing a startup is really an up and down of emotion. Sometimes you're really happy, you have a success, and sometimes it can be really quite tough. So you want to make sure that you have a good team at hand. I'm pretty sure that is the same in Japan as in Germany. In our case, actually, our team is super international. I'm the only German in our team. The rest are all international people from all over Europe. And it's interesting. I think it's quite often that international people are actually behind founding startups. I think both here in Germany and also in the US. I'm not quite sure what the reason for this is. It's maybe because immigrants or international people with an international background are a bit more entrepreneurial thinkers and a bit more willing to take risk than the average person locally. So that's just something I noticed. So yeah, our team is definitely an example for that. We are very international. And then, of course, what we need here for a research transfer startup to have the institute on board, right? They are helping a lot with actually the budget of our grant, because it's basically a grant, like a research grant that goes to the institute and is managed by the institute administration. They are managing the finances and coordinating everything, and from that our salary is paid, and only at the end of the grant period, we found the company. So the company is not yet established. The company will be founded at the end of the period, and they are providing the room and infrastructure for the startup, and they're also responsible for the licensing of the selling of the patents that will go to the startups and that are required. And then, of course, you need to have a business plan and a project plan that you are applying for, that you use to apply for the grant, basically. And for that, you usually have research transfer offices, similar like Tungali, probably like yourself. You're helping with the business planning and the project planning and sharing some experience with the young founders. Maybe at this point, another quick opportunity for questions.
Yep, thank you again very much. Audience, if you have any questions at this point, please just type in the chat or Q&A session. If not, then I personally have question from me.
Sure, please.
If it's not confidential, Patrick, can you share the amount of funding that your team has from the first phase of the EXIST research transfer program?
So yes, it's quite a lot of money goes to founding the personal costs, of course, of the 4 researchers that are in the startup working, but it's close to €1 million basically.
Wow.
A bit less, yeah.
Well, that's a huge amount, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you also mentioned that having an international team is also very beneficial in terms of having maybe the support from EXIST. So generally, if it's like an international startups and they want to start in Germany, let's say there's no like a person like you from Germany, then is it possible for like international startups to start from the EXIST program as well?
I think if you are, maybe not for startups, but if you are, for example, a PhD student doing a PhD in Germany, I mean, this is exactly how our future CEO basically came, that is now basically had the idea together with the professor to start the startup. He is not from Germany. He came here to write his PhD dissertation together with a group of the professor, and they then together came up with the idea to fund the company. So this is probably more likely option here. So because the EXIST research transfer always needs to go to the institute, so there needs to be a tie with a German university or German research institute, right? So so basically this needs to start a bit earlier. When a company is already established and a company is already founded, then the EXIST is not the right vehicle. Basically, there are other programs that might be more relevant once a company is established, but the EXIST is mostly for the research transfer. Yeah.
I see. So it's more about like kind of like a support for research projects in general, right?
Well, yeah, but like, yeah, with research projects, but like with a very strong, of course, ambition to found a company and like go towards commercialization. So the milestones for the project plan are all related to, okay, what are the milestones on the product domain, right? Like towards advancing the product development. What are the milestones towards finding the customers? What are the milestones towards establishing a company? So these are basically the project milestones that you need to hit. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask the question?
Please.
If like, because like the institute owns patent, right? Are they going to keep the patent until like how long they're going to keep patent? Like they don't give you the patent for, and also like, are they going to kick out from the like the place they are renting for during the program? Are you going to kick out after the program, or like how does it goes?
So well, we are right now in negotiations with the institute, but basically all the conditions are right that we can come to a good agreement for either exclusive license of the patents, or buying the patents, then possibly also a combination of both, first licensing, then buying at a later stage. So we are very confident that we can come to a good agreement there with the institute. And the same basically for the rooms. We will not be, I think, immediately kicked out when there's no need to be immediately kicked out once the company is funded, especially since the company will be funded actually before the end of the project period. But this is also something that we need to negotiate with the institute. If the institute would like us to leave, basically, if it is really not possible for the institute Then there's also actually right around the corner here, next to us, there's a park for startups, some facilities where startups can rent for relatively cheap office and lab spaces, and where a lot of startups here in Jena sit, and this is also always an option for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you can move on to the next part of your talk.
Yeah. So basically, what is required if you want to start applying for the exist program here in Germany, there is quite a common structure for writing a business plan. This is in Germany really the way how business plans, also when you want to apply, for example, for venture capital, what people generally expect as a structure for the business plan. So you usually start with a bit of a summary, right? You introduce the business idea and the team. You go about the innovation, like what benefit, or basically like what the background is, where you're coming from, what the history is. Then you go into an analysis of the market and the competition, where you analyze like what are the competitors, what is your unique selling proposition against the competitors, and what is your strategy for the market entry, meaning what is your pricing strategy, your product strategy, and so on. And then later you go into corporate planning. So what is exactly the business model, the planned price model also, and then into a more detailed financial plan. And the exist project or the exist grant in particular, it requires you to actually make a financial plan for 5 years into the future after the funding of the company. And that basically shows to the jury of the grant that you are able to think like a founder, like a founding team, like an entrepreneur, and that you are, basically able to come up with a feasible and realistic business case. So here on the right side, I just see that there's actually like still a couple of German words here that I forgot to translate here. But basically, it is another form of like a competitor analysis, right? Similar to what you have seen before, once in form of a graph and here in form of a table. You have basically like your long-term time plan, how you explain your business model. You can use, for example, a business model canvas, or what I used earlier, value chain. Basically, you will introduce your chart for the project time, like what everybody is doing. This is the description of the project period. What is very helpful is also if you talk to customers already and get some letters of support or some letters of intent that customers are valuing the value proposition that you have. And here, this is basically like this 5-year liquidity plan, basically, like that you can show, okay, like with the money that you plan to raise and with your expenses, you are able to sustain your startup. And maybe this is actually my last slide for this presentation, for the presentation part. Startup competitions, pitches, and investor events are, of course, like also a big part of the maybe startup journey here in Germany, but also, of course, in other countries, because you're trying, of course, to raise awareness for what you are doing. You try to get better at pitching and at presenting yourself and making connections to investors and other supporters, right? That can basically get you in touch with potential business partners and that give you exposure. So we were really lucky. We were always on the lookout for these kind of events. For example, here on the top left part, this was actually me presenting the company in Kobe, in a incubator there, and an accelerator there, to a Japanese audience, because I was able, with the International Startup Campus, to make a quick visit to Japan to see how this potential, to learn a bit more about the biomedical market in Japan, and make some connections there. So that was a really great opportunity. Here on the top right side, that was on a medical fair here in Germany, the Medica in Düsseldorf, where we could join also, which is something that usually costs a lot of money, but as a startup we could apply and get some support from the university to be part of the delegation that went to Medica. So that was really great to make some connections. And on the bottom there are two different startup competitions that we applied to, and where we actually won some prizes, and these were indeed very helpful to get exposure and be approached by some investors, which we can follow up with. So yeah, this is something I would definitely advise everybody that is in the journey of creating a startup to learn, but of course also don't overdo it, right? Like, stay focused on product development and bringing the startup forward. Don't only go for competitions and events and pitches, but also, of course, focus on what you're actually trying to do, which is bring the technology from the laboratory to the market. And there needs to be, of course, also some lab work to be done, and also office work, right? And this was basically my presentation. I want to thank you for having me, and thank you for your attention. Please feel free to contact me if you are having any questions, and especially when you have questions about what are potential options for Japanese startups to actually enter into the German market. And Germany, of course, as part of Europe, it's a large market, because you can also easily expand into other European countries. Once you are in Europe, there is basically no customs or any regulation that you need to fulfill in order to sell your devices outside of Germany, but within Europe, right? So if you are interested in the German and into the European market, I can really advise you to get in contact with Valerie Baldrup from the International Startup Campus in Central Germany. And she can help a lot with all the questions towards funding programs and networking here in Germany. So yes, thank you so much for your attention, and I'm open for questions now.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I actually have one question from the audience. They kind of asked about how you, or what you do to make this, you plan to do to make this business successful in Germany. And also if you're planning to, let's say, expand it into Japan, and what do you think is necessary to make this business successful as well?
So there's, of course, many variables that need to fit properly in order to make the business a success. I think one of the biggest points, of course, is to really know your customers well, right? Like to make sure that your business model in the end works out, that you are really having a close touch to the customers. And this is something that we're working on right now more and more to develop exactly this connection, and be in really close touch with customers to check all our hypotheses, whether or not our device is actually what they want, and how we should design the device so that it will create the most value for the customers. So I think this is probably one of the biggest success factors in the end, right? To have a functioning and solid business case. This is, I think, the first one. Then, of course, having a technology that works, the product development is extremely crucial as well. Then you have, of course, financing, right? You need to look out in order to not run out of money. You need to make sure that you have your finances in order, that you have a solid a solid plan for how you will pay your own salaries, how you will pay for rent and your and all the devices that you need, and especially to go into your question about how to expand into different markets outside of your own domestic market. This is a really interesting question, and for that I'm actually really happy that there is organizations like the International Startup Campus, or also the German-Japanese Chamber of Commerce, which help a lot, for example, with German companies that go to Japan and that need to, for example, find a place to stay, need to get familiar with Japanese laws, customs, but also, for example, labor laws, right? There's also, I know, Japanese support systems for companies that enter Japan to get consultation and also some benefits for example, when it comes to renting places, because of course there are regulations that you need to adhere, and there it helps a lot to have a local connection that is very well that has a good network in the local market. So I think these are the main success factors: customer, product, finance, and network. I think if these are coming together, plus a good team, maybe then I think these are all the necessary ingredients for success.
Yeah, customer. What else? Can you say it again? Customers.
Well, the customer contact, right? To have the business model work, then of course being able to provide the product, right? Then to have it all in the end financed, and to have a business model that works. Of course, all these are very much connected, but I think to have the financial part is very important. The investment to pay the salaries of the people, then the network is quite important, especially for international expansion, and then the team. So I think these are all points that you need to think about when you write a business plan, and that you will not be able to skip, because these are very necessary success factors. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I also have a question, like a fun question from the previous slide that you showed.
Yeah.
Yeah. The event you joined, I guess. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Like among these events and competitions, which one do you think that is like most memorable for you?
Well. I mean, they all had different qualities that made them memorable. I think the top left was so interesting because I was able to like pitch in another country, in Japan, in front of and talk to founders in Japan. That was so interesting. Like talk to other international founders that were working on research transfer, high-tech businesses in Japan. That was really fascinating, I must say. The top right, on the Medica, on the big fair, to get to know how these kind of big events, like the industry events, feel and work, and to be there and talk and network. That was quite memorable. And both on the bottom are both two competitions that we entered, and where we both were basically receiving some prizes. And the left one was a bit more general and basically open for startups from all sectors, and it was more on the region where we are from here, the region of Thuringia, where you could apply. And then on the right side, it was more tailored towards science and especially medical technologies. So startups with a bit more of a high-tech focus. So this is also maybe something that I would advise other startups to look out for, maybe to enter one competition that is a bit more regional and a bit more local to like get exposure to the local environment, and then enter another competition, maybe on a national or international level, where you can get some more exposure to an environment that is a bit closer related to your business, right? So like, for example, medical technology or life science, right? So this is maybe an advice that I would give other founders. Try to find one local competition that you can apply to, and one regional competition for the local network, and then one maybe larger competition, but with focus on your sector, where you can build the sector network. Like for example, to investors from exactly the domain of medical technology or life science in our case.
Thank you. It's time already. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you so much as well for having me.
Yeah, we enjoyed a lot. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.